Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome back to another episode, 52 Authors, 52 Weeks. And today I am joined by author Jenifer Walsh. Hey, there's a Walsh construction.
There is.
And the book is, I like to show covers, Necessary Grief, an autobiographical journey through divorce and healing trauma. Such a powerful subtitle for the book. Something that I don't know personally about divorce, but I've witnessed friends who have gotten a divorce. I've witnessed my parents go through a divorce. And one of the things I thought about as I was looking through your book is I wonder if I have some trauma from my parents' divorce, because when they told us that they were getting divorced, and this is crazy, right? I'm 51, but I remember this 10-year-old version of what was happening like it was yesterday. My sister and I were in the tub, and my parents came and told us that they were getting divorced. And the funny thing is, because I was older, I saw what was going down in the household, right? I knew that we're gonna be moving soon. I
Mm.
just knew that, right? And so I think my sister and I, as a result of that, I think have experienced life different. Um, we're 4 years apart. She's not married. I've been married for 12 years, got married later in life. But I'm very clear on the fact that if this doesn't work out, I will not be doing it again, because
Mm.
this marriage is a full-time job.
Right.
And we plan to grow old with each other, but my grandparents were married for 78 years.
Wow.
So I know a lot of folks that have been married for a long time, but I also know folks that have gotten marriages annulled.
Sure. Yeah.
Yes. So tell our listening and viewing audience about you, your background, before we get into the book.
Yeah. So, currently I am a trauma informed somatic coach, and I've gone through programs like the professional program of compassionate inquiry. And then I've also done foundational circles of internal family systems. And basically, my background has been I've been a mental health advocate for over 15 years. I have four children, and two of them have special needs. So, yeah, I've been on that journey and the journey of working with families for a really long time. Um, much of my background has to do with mental health. And that was sort of part of the catalyst for doing the work I ended up doing with the trauma. And so that's where I am today, writing and some art and things like that. Yeah.
I love it. So, if you don't mind me asking, tell me more about your special needs children.
My oldest son has a serious mental health diagnosis, and he's been on that journey since he was about 5 years old. And we've struggled over the years with all kinds of things. And he at one point attempted suicide. So there was a lot of chaos and a lot of difficulty for a long, long time. And then one of my other sons, younger sons, is diagnosed with autism. So
Wow.
yeah, it's
Wow.
it's been a little bit of a heavy journey a lot of times. Yeah.
Well, I said this so many times before, and I have to say it again today so that our listening, viewing audience knows. For my show, 52 Authors, 52 Weeks, I do not meet with the authors ahead of time. These sessions are recorded. We come on 5 minutes before, we chat it up, and we record, and then these are released. And so I want to tell you how powerful this journey is. Number one, my 32-year-old daughter is special needs. She was never diagnosed with autism, but she is in a autism longitudinal study and has been for a very long time. But she is deaf. Mentally, she is about somewhere between 5 and 10. In some areas, she's higher than others. She didn't walk until she was 7. And when she was 2 years old, I tried to take my life. And I was struggling with finding my voice as a woman. And now I'm this little girl's mother who, as you know, kids do not come with a user's manual, right?
No, not at
So
all.
I'm trying to navigate life with her. And I realized that it took me until I was 50 years old to share this story with the world. And so many people have told me how much it has helped them because they've seen me in professional settings and they couldn't fathom that I would do something like this because I'm always so happy. But I said that to say, we don't look like what we've been through.
Mhm.
And you never know what someone else has gone through, what they are going through. And that's why it pays um, it serves us all to be nice to everyone because you just don't know what they're going through and you don't know who you're going to need when you're going through your thing. And not if it happens, when it happens, right?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And the
Yeah,
only benefit of the journey, I feel like sometimes that of the hardship, I mean, is that to be a benefit to someone else.
absolutely. I say that all the time. My journey wasn't for me. But in the midst of finding my voice as the woman and the mother, I became a very strong advocate for my daughter and am able to navigate, even at 32, the annual review process and not afraid to fight for the things that she needs. And so I believe that that situation was my wake up call to number one, realize, oh, I didn't die, so I was supposed to be here. I was supposed to be her mom, but most importantly, that I was supposed to help others who were experiencing, it could be similar situation, it could be different. But I tell people all the time, I'm gonna tell you, the pumping of the stomach with charcoal to get the pills out, that is an experience that is ingrained in my mind forever.
I bet. I bet.
So
Mm.
all right. Well, enough about that. Let's talk about the book. I told you I'm into covers. I'm into just looking at the book and really one of the things I love about interviewing you all is because I get to see you, I get to hear you, I get to feel um what you went through or what you're describing in your book. So let's talk about why? Why did you decide to write this book?
Well, I think it actually started out. So last year, I went through a period where my husband was ending our 27-year relationship. He came to me and said that he wanted a divorce, and it was not expected. And it was one of those journeys that I went on that I was like, I don't have a roadmap here for what this looks like. And at the time, I think I was in so much shock and like quite a lot of grief that I just sat down and I started writing things out because it was just the medium for which I felt I can lay this out. And so then at some point, I realized it was becoming a book. And I just looked at everything and I said, you know what? If I'm going to tell this story, I want to do it justice. And I want to do justice to like the authentic parts of me. And I also want to show people that divorce doesn't have to look like we see it portrayed so many places in this really negative way. Even if it's a negative experience in some aspects, we have capacity within ourselves to own our own personal stuff and look at it through a lens of, well, maybe this happened for a specific reason. And I just want to show up in the world in the most authentic way possible. So that's why I wrote it.
Well, and what's interesting, because in the book, very early in the book, you say, for my husband, you had my whole heart. What made I have to show this to everybody because I need them to let me see if I can get it in the camera. I need them to see this. What made you write that?
Well, and it's so funny because actually a bunch of people have asked me the same question, and I always have the same answer, and that it's just that's truth. Right? There was no part of me that was not in this relationship or in for him or in with him. And I wanted him to know that he was the reason I wrote it. And it was the process. It was sort of a for us process, but really a for him process. I wanted him to see that no matter what's happened, I'm never ever going to show up differently than I've ever been. Like, this is just who I am.
Wow. So you were staying true to yourself.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, um, let's talk about the journey. So you decided it needed to be a book, and you were obviously going through this grief. What was your process like? Because a lot of people often ask, or they say, I can't write a book. I'm not a writer. So what was your process like in writing your book?
I basically sat out on my back patio and I like just took the computer and I just wrote and wrote and wrote everything that was coming up, everything that was, just authentically there. I just kind of chronicled it, right? And I just kind of looked at everything and then I was like, well, obviously some of this isn't going to make sense in context. So I kind of moved things around. But I think everybody has a voice, right? I think everybody has the opportunity to create if they want to create, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
What's really interesting, my first author of this year, Dr. Nisa Jenkins, her book is Speak Up. I Can't Hear You, The Voice of a Woman.
Mhm.
And when I think about how powerful our voices are, I think the mountain that we need to move in order for us to use our voices is oftentimes us. We are our biggest, worst own enemy because we just think we don't deserve to do anything. No one, wants to hear my story. And I've told several people, and they're just like, you're just saying that because you wrote a book. I'm like, no, there is a book in you
Mm,
that you need to write so that you can help others realize that they're not alone.
mm,
And I will tell you from a personal perspective, my first three chapters, I opened up Zoom and was just talking and crying
mm,
the whole time.
mm,
Especially when I was talking about, the suicide attempt. And I believe the book is what has really completely healed me
mm,
and freed me up to truly walk in my purpose
mhm,
and to serve who I'm supposed to be serving.
mm.
And that was a scary adventure journey to be on. But when I got to the end, I was like, oh, there's another book in you that you need to write, right? And so it's so freeing, and it does not substitute for therapy. Let's just be
No,
clear about that.
right. Yep.
But it can help you learn so much more about you as a person. And to me, that helps you go through the healing phases because you're learning more about you. You mentioned, I'm looking at my gazebo, you mentioned sitting outside and just writing. After the first three chapters, learned, oh, you can just open up Microsoft Word and click on that little button, dictate button, and it'll type the words for you. And so that really kind of sped up my process when I had something to say. And
Mm,
I bring that up because people don't realize we may not write this book in a day. You know how you see those ads, write your book in a day? It took me
yes.
months to write
Sure.
my book.
Yeah.
And my final chapter, I wrote the chapter speaking to Microsoft Word, was in a hotel room, and I was crying the whole time I was speaking the words. And the person who was in the room with me was like, did you record? I was on a balcony and she was in the room. Did you record all of that? I was like, no, I was just talking to Microsoft Word. She was like, oh my gosh, you should have recorded that. She said, I could hear, she said it was like you were giving birth to a baby
Mm,
because I could hear you going through the contractions and pushing. And she said every word you were saying, somebody would have thought you would have rehearsed it, but things just started naturally flowing out of my mouth. And the chapter was called Faith Over Fear.
Mm.
And when I tell you it set me free, and when I walked out of that room and went to this event downstairs, everybody was looking at me because I had this glow on my face. I didn't have any makeup on. I literally had this natural glow
Yeah.
from allowing myself to go through the process.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because I think there's a time, right? And I don't know if this is your experience, but it's like when your higher self takes over and it
Mm,
just kind of comes in. And if you're willing to like let it in and let go, it's all there.
absolutely. And for me, it was at that hotel, and I was in Jamaica, by the way, one of my favorite places in the world. But another chapter I wrote in the car riding with my husband. And again, I had my iPad open, Microsoft Word was open, and I was speaking and crying.
Mm.
And so I look back on that journey and I didn't understand it, but I allowed myself to go through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So freeing, so freeing.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the areas of the book. And one of them is in chapter 3, is about some clarity.
Mm.
Talk to us about clarity and your process. In the book, you mentioned grief comes in waves.
Yeah.
And sometimes it will hit me out of the blue.
Hmm. Yeah. Sure. And there are times where I will just get, I'll be doing anything, any random thing, a chore, cooking sometimes, and something will just come in. And typically for me, I think it tends to be a part, right? In internal family systems, we talk about people all being a sum of different parts. And sometimes a part will notice something and be like, huh, get really curious about something. And then I'll have to look at it from the part's perspective. And then I say, oh, because sometimes my parts hold things that I'm not cognizantly aware of. And so if they bring something to my attention and I have to look at it, sometimes I'm like, where is this where is this even coming from? But I'm like, okay. And so then I say to myself, okay. So usually there's a sensation along with that, but I try to tap in kind of in real time. And the more I do that, the more I learn. So the clarity comes when I'm open and I just allow whatever part needs something or wants something to get my attention. I put the attention on it, and I'm always met with something I didn't know before. And so I think that process has really allowed me, the self-awareness has made a huge difference for me. And that's why in my coaching, I'm always about the present moment. I'm like, what's happening for you right now? Let's get out of the story for a second. What's happening for you? And it's amazing because the things come up and people were like, I didn't actually even know that was bothering me, or I didn't know that was a thing, right? So clarity comes, I think, with an openness and a like non-judgmental spirit where you're just allowing. Yeah.
I love it. I often say that you have to become comfortable being uncomfortable, because for me, that's when I get my most clarity, right?
Mhm.
When you're comfortable, you just kind of are, uh, to some extent, existing. Earlier today, I did a presentation on burnout, and I didn't realize that I was experiencing burnout until I went to see a therapist and she was like, you're burnout. And that's why you're not sleeping at night, right? Because I went through this period of time where I was popping Tylenol PM every night, right?
Mhm.
And once I got the tools to help me navigate the burnout and also eliminate some things. And
Mhm.
my burnout was, mostly workplace burnout. And once I got the tools in place, once I made the changes that I needed to make, which was quit that job,
Mhm.
I was sleep at night.
Yeah.
No problem at all.
Right.
Right. So even the tools that the therapist had me doing to go to sleep I no longer need those tools because I got rid of the triggers.
Exactly. And I think that's like a huge piece of what I would say, right? The body speaks in whispers, but then it gets louder and louder, and eventually illness gets created. And the only reason the illness gets created is because we're not listening. But you address the symptom with Tylenol and whatever, you weren't getting better, got to the root cause, and here you are.
Yes, yes. Oh, that's so powerful. So, what would you say to that person who, you never want to tell anyone to walk away from their marriage, but what would you say to the person who, like you, has been told that the other person is leaving? What would you say to that person that's going through that right now?
I think what I'm going to pull out is something not everyone's going to want to hear, and I myself didn't want to hear it, but it's actually an Eckhart Tolle quote: "Be with what is, all else is madness." Right? Sometimes you're not going to control things, you're not going to get your way, you're not going to get what you want necessarily, but sometimes you might get what you need, whether you know it or not. And it's just the process of allowing. As hard and difficult as it is, allow. Yeah.
Wow. And that's the allowance part is the hard part.
Hard, very difficult. No one says it's easy, right? It really is just hard.
Nothing in life is easy, right?
Mm-mm. No.
I think back on um, being not married, but being in a relationship with a guy who, in my heart, I knew that this person did not want to be married. And I literally was forcing him to tell me that that's not what he wanted, right? And the day he told me, I finally heard it. He had been saying it.
Mm.
He just didn't say the words, I
Right.
don't want to marry you. And so once he said it, verbally said it, I got it, it clicked. But he had been saying it all along, but I didn't get silent so I could hear.
Hmm. And for sure, behavior speaks louder than words, right? Behavior is a language. So we need to be pay attention to that for sure.
Do you think, so you talk about behavior is a language. Do you think that oftentimes we don't recognize the behavior because we haven't taken the time to really understand behaviors in general, our own behaviors, the behaviors of others? We just kind of, you know, floating through life, not paying attention.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's a lack of awareness piece, right? But also, I think sometimes people intentionally delude themselves because
Mm,
of fear and all kinds of other things. And so then it's like, yeah, that's not really true, or that's not really right. And they haven't said that. So you know what I mean? It's that kind of process as well. And so I think there's a number of factors at play, but for sure, I mean, a lack of awareness, a busyness, whatever it is. But then I also want to bring something to you there, and that is every person has responsibility, right? And if a person is behaving in a way that's the exact opposite of what they're saying, you have to wonder, why aren't they just saying it? Because there's fear on that side as well, right? And so I don't want to give a pass to the people who are just behaving in ways but saying the exact opposite, right? There has to be some kind of congruence. But if there's not congruence, the other person has to go, okay, wait a minute. Something's happening here, right? So yeah, I mean, but I think everyone has to have personal responsibility. Sure.
absolutely. So, on the other side of this situation, how are you?
I am pretty well. I'm navigating, right? Like this is a whole new world. I did not expect to be starting over at nearly 53, right? It's just so, but I've done things, right? I spent 6 weeks in France. I took myself and my autistic son and we went to France, and we just kind of left ourselves there and just were in the present moment the whole time and enjoyed ourselves and tried to look at what is now possible, right? And so that's brought a lot of good things. I mean, I've had a lot of good experiences, And, luckily my kids are super supportive and like really sweet. And I have some good friends. So I've been just trying to sink myself into those good pieces.
All right. Well, at 51, I feel like these are the best years of our lives.
Right. Right.
I mean, we know so much more about ourselves. We know what we like, what we don't like. I mean, I don't know. It's something about as soon as that clock strikes 50, you're
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm not doing that. No, 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 thank you. Right? It's just it rolls off your tongue so much easier.
Yes.
Than people talk about what happens after 50, but it's not until you experience it for yourself that you appreciate it and
A
understand
hundred,
it.
100%. Absolutely. And I agree. It's the sort of that space of I'm not doing what I don't want to do anymore. Yeah,
And I don't care who doesn't like it.
exactly. Exactly.
So, what's the chapter that everybody has a favorite chapter in their book? Mine is Faith Over Fear, but what's the chapter that is your favorite chapter that brings you the greatest joy? I like Life Goes On, but I'm not the author.
I think actually, I think it's the chapter which I want to say might be chapter 6, where I'm sort of getting into parts and the parts that are coming up, and I'm just allowing the parts to kind of have a voice. I really think that for people, it's been interesting because I've gotten some feedback and everyone is sort of blown away a little bit. They're just like, I didn't even know this was a thing. And it made me sort of reflect and go, hey, wait a minute, what's happening for me? Right. And so that's one of the things that I love to hear the most because I love to hear people discovering things about themselves they didn't know before because that information is just extremely valuable. Yeah.
And I always say these books are not for us. Our name may be on the front of the book, but it is not for us.
Yeah.
It's not for us. Um, One part in the book, you said I was hoping I'd be feeling a little better by now. And then you go into talking about the weight that's on your chest that was heavy. And oftentimes when I am presenting, I encourage people to shed the weight that's holding them hostage. And I'm not talking about physical weight. It's enough stuff in the media about physical weight, right? But I'm talking about the things that we have allowed to hold us back that's preventing us from moving forward, but recognizing that it's a process. You don't just wake up one day and say, I'm gonna quit my job. Well, you may do that, but you're not necessarily going to actually quit today. You may,
Right.
depending on how your mental status is, right?
Of course.
You may make that decision, but just really being intentional about getting rid of those things that don't serve us anymore, that don't make us happy, that don't feed our soul,
Yes.
right? Because it's just taking up real estate that you don't need.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, and it's amazing, even still that, like, we talked about the grief coming in waves, right? And right now I'm on, like, a lower wave, the grief isn't so oppressive at the moment. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I feel lighter in a lot of ways, but I do believe it's because I've allowed everything to come up, right? I'm not holding and suppressing and pushing anything down. I'm just like, whatever it is, and it allows me to keep moving.
I love it. And what I think is so very important, and this may not be on your radar today, but in order for you to be the best person you could be for the next person, if there is a next person, you've got to shed all of that baggage so that you don't bring it into the next situation because that person doesn't deserve it and it doesn't
100%.
do you any good.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, right? Creating the awareness around where am I at? What am I doing? What am I looking at? Yeah, I agree with that profoundly. And I think that's why I've kept myself sort of low key, right? Because I'm like, I need some time here, right? 27 years is a long time.
Yeah, I have a friend who wrote that book who after 30 years they got divorced and he's remarried to a younger person and had a baby and is starting his life all over again. I personally believe he's running from something
Mm.
that he hasn't quite figured out. But I'm so happy to see my friend in her journey. Um, she's such a beautiful soul, a beautiful person, just the most kindest person you'll ever meet. And I can't wait until her next person finds her, and she's able to continue down the love journey. And maybe she might not meet anybody. I mean, as a person who was single for a long time before I got married, and I tell my daughters this all the time, before you can join with someone else, you have to be a whole person first, right? You don't want to be consumed by that other person's identity. You want to be two individuals that then come together and help each other grow, as opposed to you just folding into who they are and not having your own identity.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's true. But then there's something else I would bring to that. And the fact is, right, we heal in relationship with others. But yeah, it can't be a process of two people having no idea who they are, right? There has to have been some growth and some movement. But it is great. Like you're going to have conflict, right? You're going but then it's like, how do I solve this? How are we working together as a team and we're not allowing each other's baggage to pull us under? Yeah.
I like that. Allowing each other's baggage to pull us under. Oh, you see that play out so much.
So much.
Mm. Well, I just am enjoying this conversation because it's us two gals just being authentically ourselves. We don't have our mask on. This is not reality TV. We are real people talking about real life, right? And
Yeah.
how to navigate it. And so, before we go, please tell our listening, viewing audience how they can find you, how they can get the book. I know where I got the book from, but there might be other places. I have to show the book in the camera.
Yeah, so I self-publish, so it's on Amazon.com and it's on Kindle as well. And I'm also working on the Audible right now, so that'll hopefully be available soon.
Oh my goodness, you are the third author that I've met with that talked about Audible. You all are my official accountability partners. I've recorded the book. I just have to sit down, and it's the type A in me. I have to sit down and listen to the recording. There's a couple of updates. I told my publisher we're going to do a second edition of the book. But I have been procrastinating with closing that door.
Mm.
So I'm going to make a personal commitment to get back. I mean, I've already recorded the 12 chapters. So, but as I, chat with authors and I, reflect, I think there are some parts of the recording that I want to change. So that's part of why I was a little hesitant, but confirmation can come from a variety of places. And so
Absolutely.
I realized today I need to, by the time this episode airs, if my audiobook is not out, we have a problem.
Yeah. I have to be messaging you. Where is it?
Yes. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay. And I have a desk over there where the book, my notes are sitting. I've done so much. We're not going to talk about that, but I've been having this whole process, which has really been rewarding. But I said, you know what? You still got to eat. You're not a high paid author, so you can't just be sitting at the desk with the book all day. But I do need to make the time to close that chapter.
Yeah, because we'd love to hear your voice, and you telling your story is super powerful, you know?
Yes,
So,
yes.
yeah.
So where can our listening, viewing audience find you?
So my website is courageousawareness.co. And yeah, so I'm available there, and you can certainly hit me up by email on there, and I'd be happy to talk to anybody. It's a journey, right? We all need support.
You know what? In one of my chapters, I talk about the importance of community and how the support that I got after the situation that has really helped me grow. But people have been telling me for so long how much I've helped them grow. And so that's a testament to the fact that we all need each other
Yes,
in some shape, form, or fashion.
we do. Absolutely. So thank you for providing this space because, it's really appreciated on my part. And I know people love to hear from you. So we're all doing the work together.
Yes, we are impacting the world, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
one book, one person, one topic at a time. I think it allows us to move the needle forward. And I know you know this more than anyone else. Mental health and attention towards, I don't want to say eradicating it, but controlling it, supporting it is
Yeah. No, it's terrible. It's terrible. And so every space that can provide more access or new access, people don't always need a therapist. I don't not espouse therapy, but I mean, sometimes people just need to talk to other people and get some of the weight off, like you're saying, like that emotional weight. And what allows them to be vulnerable is having a safe space. So we can be safe spaces for each other.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, it has been such a pleasure chatting with you today. I want to thank you again for joining us today. Everyone else, this has been another amazing episode 52 authors, 52 weeks. 2024 has been amazing. I've said this before, I'm going to say it again. I definitely am going to do a Where Are They Now in 2025 because I think it's just so important for us to all continue to build this community of authors, of just everyday folks that have a desire to help others grow and move forward from whatever has been happening in their life.
Yeah. Well, and I thank you equally and thank you for your contributions and allowing me the space to do this as well.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day.